I wanted to ask a question about another person from that draft class because I think if we look at from year by year, Sam Rinzel has taken a step every single year, and he's taken a pretty big stride this year, I'd say. He's getting pretty highly talked about in terms of what he's done at Minnesota, and the numbers speak for it, obviously. But I just want to know what's your take on Sam Rinzel's development and kind of where you could see him in NHL level down the line, obviously.
Yeah. I think he's a guy who, you know, it's so funny to me watching Chicago sort of draft and develop their defensemen, and I think the guy that kind of he when I look at a guy like Kevin Korchinski, right, I see a guy who is still figuring it out, still pretty raw, still
only 20.
Yeah, he's still really young, but he's that really lanky, fluid, skilled passing guy who just moves the puck really, really well and has a really good set of feet under him. And when I watched Sam Rinzel when he was a draft eligible, I thought very similar things. Obviously not to the same level, but he was a very sort of lanky, tall, thin, but really sort of fluid defenseman on his feet. I think generating a lot of speed on his frame at the time was a bit of an issue, and maybe that still is a little bit of an issue, but he just covers ice so well, and has a really good amount of skill. Not afraid to shoot the puck either. I'm not always the biggest fan of point shooting defensemen, but it is something that he's kind of done a little bit more in his game. But he was always a guy to me where I'm sort of sitting there going, yeah, he's probably a guy you leave in college and just let him just play and play and play, and just get the reps, playing a ton of minutes. I don't have it in front of me how many minutes he's playing for Minnesota on average. Let me look here. Yeah, he's playing 19, 18 minutes at even strength every game. That's a lot of reps, and he's not going to get that in the AHL next year, right? He probably won't. He definitely won't if he makes an NHL roster, which I don't think he will. So I don't think there's any rush to bring him in. And I just think that the more and more comfortable he gets, the more and more the quicker he gets, and I think the stronger he gets, the better off he'll be. So whenever I've watched Minnesota, I do notice Rinzel quite a lot when I see him there. And I think he has done a really good job sort of working on that or maintaining that fluidity in his skating ability and combining that with really good skill level and a bit of a delay game, breaking pucks out and making clean passes and all of those things you need your defenseman to do. So he's been a guy where from the get-go it was, late first round pick, you may get a middle pair guy out of him that sort of leans a little more offensively. You'll leave him in college because, drafting guys out of high school is never a sure thing, but you don't have to rush him, right? You just leave him there, let him sort of play more and more and more and more. And next year, if he's a premier NCAA defenseman, if he isn't already with Minnesota, then you can think about maybe bringing him in because, I don't think there's any reason to rush him based on how he is as a player, but he has come along quite a bit, which is really, really nice to see for me. Because I was a fan of him in his draft year. I thought he was a little bit of a ways off, but if he hits, he could be a really, really, really interesting offensive defenseman for sure.
And like you said, he wouldn't get those minutes in Rockford until Lev Shunov graduates. So that's just the reality of the situation. And it's how it should be. Lev Shunov should be the guy playing 24, 25 minutes a night in Rockford, preparing for when he gets to the NHL level. But like you said, if he hits, that it makes that defensive core just that much more versatile because Vlasic's developed at a very steady rate. Like you said, if Korchinski can find find those raw points in his game and refine them, he could be a very good puck moving defenseman in this league. They're just going to have a lot of options on that back end, which is something that I think they have a great fortune of. And a couple of these guys, they probably didn't even see that with that much. Especially, guys like Wyatt Kaiser, who seem like they could be a good third pairing defenseman. Ethan Del Mastro's played pretty good in the NHL level this year, better than I expected at least. And Nolan Allen.
Jones going now.
Yeah. Who wants a job, right?
Right. Yeah. Everyone's getting ice time and they're taking advantage of it, which has been fun to see for sure.
Yeah. So, I think overall, I think Chicago's done a really good job. The thing I've liked about what Chicago's done with all of these draft picks they've had is a little bit of everything. They have a little bit of all kinds of different hockey players, right? I think I don't think you guys did this specifically, but last year I had some Chicago fans in my show and in my chat going like, who should Chicago aim at? Like, what type of player, if you were the king of the world there, would you be aiming for? I mean, for me, like, it was Ivan Demidov was the easy decision for me. But beyond that, like, I kind of just went, they have a little bit of everything. Like, if you draft another defenseman in the first round, for example, then I totally see why, right? They've done it a lot, but they have some bigger physical guys. They have some maybe more skill focused guys. They have, these more mobile 200-foot guys. And up front, they have, smaller, energetic, speedy guys, bigger, energetic guys. They have, full-on speedsters. They have really high skill finishers. They have all kinds of different player types, like in a solid amount. So you could kind of go with the flow a little bit and see who you come out with, right? And just adds to the stable. And I don't think many teams really have as much of a like balanced group of players in their stable on the way, which in a sense I think you need. So for me, watching Chicago and see where they've gone and who they've drafted and where their draft picks have come from and how they've developed over the last few years, that's been the really, really fascinating thing for me with this team, because they've drafted a lot. And, if I were in the driver's seat, I think things would look very different, but I'm not saying that would be I'm not saying it would be a good thing. I'm
Taking
just
Leo
saying,
Carlson first overall.
Would be
Get excited.
different.
right. Exactly. Yeah, no, Connor Bedard. No, nah.
Dmitry Semishev first overall.
Yeah,
Let's go.
first overall. Exactly. No, but I just mean, like, I probably would in some areas looked a bit different, but I mean, I still look at what they've done and all of the picks they've used and look at how they've looked at the group of players they've amassed. And I'm going, I've seen a bunch of these guys before, and there's not very many where I looked at them and went, yeah, I don't see how this is going to work out. I don't really see anything with this guy that I think is potentially an NHL job, pretty much, at least in the first few rounds. And I think that's a very good sign. And I'm hoping that we're starting to see the sort of upswing for Chicago to start using these younger players and get some good results and see them wherever they may go from here.
100%. Yeah. They're in a really good spot right now. I think, like you said, that versatility has been very nice to see them draft. Like you said, they do draft a lot of small, energetic forwards, but they're all good at different things, which I think is very useful. Like you said, they have a couple of good finishers in the system. Like, you have a Nick Lardis, you have a Gavin Hayes in there, people who have shown that goal scoring potential in the past. And, you have great guys who show a great two-way game. Like, I think Merrick Van Acker, his tool set is so versatile for the NHL level if he can get the proper development curve. And there's just so many intriguing prospects like that. You look at Sasha Boisvert, his game could be very versatile in terms of playing anywhere in the lineup potentially with the way his ceilings looked at times. It's a very interesting situation. And I know Pierce kind of wanted to talk about where the Hawks are going to be picking, so I'll let him take the floor there.
Yeah, I kind of just want, like, since we're kind of on the topic of the Blackhawks farm system right now, I want to ask about Oliver Moore, because I remember in the draft year, we were also very big fans of Oliver Moore. We've seen the video of Kyle Davidson, like, just pure exhilaration.
Yeah.
He wanted to trade up and get Oliver Moore, couldn't make it work, but he fell into their lap anyways. And just, like, from that draft class, he was easily, like, the best skater. Like, he was ranked right at the top for being the best skater, fastest skater, and obviously the Blackhawks love that. And he definitely projects as a guy who can play in the NHL. To me, the question is, like, how much offense can he provide, and can he be a top six guy, or is he more like a third line center, which, I mean, is perfectly fine. Like, he can be a guy who's on your penalty kill and maybe on your second power play. It's just a wonder of how much offense could he maybe provide.
Yeah, I mean, I you don't have to push me very hard to say good things about Oliver Moore, right? Like, I've been a huge fan of him for a really long time. Even going back to when he was 17 and just seeing 16, even when he was with the under 17 team. You just saw such a special talent there with him. Just such a gifted skater, and a guy who, I love guys where you put them over the boards and you know what you're getting. You know every single shift that he's a guy who's going to play with speed, play with intensity, cause turnovers, not with the puck, but cause turnovers for the other team and just drive the bus in the right direction so often. And watching him with Minnesota this year, I mean, the guys he's playing with, I'm not sure are the best matchup for him. I believe when I've seen him, it's largely been Matthew Wood and I can't remember the other one, but I mean, at the end of the day, I think with Moore, it's a very much I could see it's hard for me to see him not being an NHL player in some fashion. I feel like his sort of playmaking ability, I think, lends him to maybe being on your second line somewhere. But a guy like that, to me, as an excellent sort of third line center, does not really seem that crazy to me. I look at him and I go, yeah, like the thought to me was, in an ideal world at the end of the day, Connor Bedard's a really gifted skater, but like, what about Oliver Moore up the middle of the ice with Bedard on the wing? And you can sort of alleviate Bedard's defensive responsibility because Moore can do that. And those two guys kind of fill in the gaps for each other, but have the skating ability and the speed to sort of go on rushes together and play together on the, on offensive situations. And Moore is a bit more of that playmaking driving player, whereas Bedard has a playmaking streak to him as well, but his finishing ability is really kind of what his bread and butter historically has been. So I don't know. It'll be very interesting to see what happens with him. Again, like, does he go back to university for another season? I could see it, and just really, play even more and take even more of an important role on that team. Like, again, we were talking about Rinzel up near 18 and a half minutes at even strength of game. Moore is down around 13, 14, which is still sizable, but there's room for him to be really dependent on there. And I feel like that might be something I would think about. But at the end of the day, I'm a real optimist about him. I think there's a lot to write home about. I think if you look at just at his point production, you might go, I think you might be a little mistaken if you sort of look at that and go, well, maybe he won't be a high end offensive player in the NHL, because I don't know, if I'm coaching him, I always think about if I'm coaching guys like him and I go, I don't really like, there aren't that many notes, right? Like sometimes he can skate himself into pressure and cause turnovers or take shots from the perimeter where he definitely shouldn't be doing that. But at the end of the day, like the important stuff is what he's really good at, which is sort of getting turnovers in the defensive zone, turning the puck around, getting it up the ice, setting up in the offensive zone. Offensive zone turnover generation is super important. He's got the speed and the tenacity to do it all. And I think he just checks so many important boxes for me that, yeah, I'm not super concerned about him at all. And I can see why Kyle Davidson, I saw that video too. I could see why Kyle Davidson is doing the fist pump, at the table there. Cause yeah, I mean, really good player. And I think he overcomes whatever criticism there might be from whoever it might be.
We always look, or at least for me, like I'm always looking at because the NHL is such a copycat league. It's like, okay, what players could they be comparable to from like recent cup winning teams? And I just think of Vegas, like, oh, could he be like I don't know, William Karlsson or a Chandler Stevenson when he was on Vegas? Like, not gaudy point totals, but if he hits 50, even 60 points and like is just a speedster who can play in your middle six, maybe sometimes on your first line of pinch, maybe go to the wing, but play center. Like, I think you take that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm a big believer in what I believe to be playoff style hockey being really important to look for in the draft. Like, I think you want guys like a Chandler Stevenson because they have such high levels of intensity in their game, but they also have the skill to sort of, it's not just a thing. It's not enough for me, at least, to like hit a guy in the boards and erase them from the puck, right? You have to somehow gain possession of it, create a little bit of room for yourself, and find a way to generate something moving offensively, right? Like a bit of skill, a bit of quickness, find a way to do something with that turnover you just generated, rather than just pinning a guy against the boards and sort of grinding the game down and maybe making it into a 50-50 battle. Like, if you can quickly get in there and quickly get out while still having that intensity level in your game, then that's super valuable to me. And a guy like Moore does that really well. And I mean, Chandler Stevenson's a name that does come to mind for me as well, where, yeah, you might look at him and go, yeah, he's not an 80-point scorer. He's not a 90-point scorer, but part of that might be who he's playing with. Like if you take a Chandler Stevenson and put him on a line with Alex Ovechkin, are you getting a much more productive player out of Chandler Stevenson just by virtue of playing with Ovechkin? Probably, to a certain extent. So it might just be a matter of who he's playing with, because a guy like Moore, I think, does make plays really well, but his real value is that speed in transition, that defensive ability, that ability to generate turnovers. And to me, that's really, really valuable. And so that's why I did and remain a really, really big fan of his.
Yeah, from everything we're hearing, like from Blackhawks beats writers, it's very likely that Oliver Moore and Sam Rinzel, and I've heard Ryan Green, are going to sign with the Blackhawks at the end of the year. I would think they get the Frank Nazar treatment, because Frank Nazar signed. I think he played 3 games, but then the following year they were like, okay, you got to have a really good development camp, or else we're starting you in Rockford. And I think that would be the thing with Moore and Rinzel.
Yeah.
Or if not, if they play another year in college, I think that's good as well.
Yeah.
But I don't think they're going to be rushed into the NHL.
I hope not. I don't know.
Yeah.
I would take my time with the guys like that,
Yeah, you'd hope so.
I think Davidson has shown that he's not going to do that. Like, he might give them a few games, but I don't think he's going to keep any of them up for an extended period of time unless they've earned it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
One more person I have to ask about in the Blackhawks prospect pool before we get on to the 2025 draft is one I think that's caught a lot of people's attention is Nick Lardis. And to me, he's the most intriguing one, because all the prospects we've talked about, I think they have a lot of projectability at the NHL level. Nick Lardis is so interesting to me because I feel like he's putting up crazy numbers, but we've seen this before. People with overagers in any CHL league, for that matter, just putting up monster numbers, and then you don't really go anywhere. But I think of a lot of past seasons in the CHL where you'll have those players, but they'll be like 6'5", 200 pounds, just literally bullying people, and like they're already 20 years old. Whereas I look at Nick Lardis, he's sub 6 feet tall, he's sub 200 pounds, and he doesn't turn 20 till I think July. And I wonder, and I wonder, like, what is his projectability? Like, could he be anything at the NHL level? Like, I think he will be an NHL player, but like, how good could he be? Like, is he like more like an Andrew Mangiapane type player where he's kind of in your middle six, or could he be like, I don't know, insert small winger like a Jeff Skinner, or like absolute high end like a Jake Gensel?
Yeah, I mean, I think Nick Lardis is gonna be an interesting one. I'm not ready to sort of anoint him as an NHL player right now. I think Lardis is the type of player who, I mean, he is a target for power play opportunities in Brantford. He plays with a really, really talented playmaking center a lot of the time in Jake O'Brien, from what I've seen. He shoots the puck a ton. And is just,
doesn't he have like 400 shots or something? Like something crazy.
Some absolutely ridiculous number of shots. I mean, I hope it's 400 because that's awesome. And so for me, though, like my whole thing about him, and I actually went and watched him not too long ago because I have seen a lot of people kind of chattering about him, I guess you could say. And I mean, with me, the thing for him is like he kind of is the type of player where, if his name came up in the 3rd round, I would, totally understand why. And if someone really, really wanted him, I wouldn't get in the way. But the thing for me was always with him, he's a guy where it's like, once the puck is in the offensive zone, that's really when he sort of comes alive. Like he's a little bit absent from transition and sort of that everything that Oliver Moore does, in my view, is like something that kind of is missing from Nick Lardis's game, right? It's not like he's lazy or anything. That's not what I'm saying. It's just he doesn't have that style of play. And that's fine. It's just I think it's more difficult to earn a job in the NHL. Like it is a really fine dividing line. I don't think Lardis is the type of guy who, if he's not on your top 2 lines, he could maybe become a 3rd or 4th line guy. Like his job in the NHL probably will be go out and score. We might put you on the 2nd power play unit, and clap bombs all day, right? Like maybe a Nick Robertson type of player comes to mind. But I look at a Nick Robertson and I go, he scored a ton in junior, but he was a little bit more of a motor guy. Like his energy level is super, super high. And I don't necessarily see that in Lardis, but I do think Lardis just absolutely hammers hockey pucks. And that can work. You know, if you score goals, you can't argue with that. So I can't say it's impossible. I think it'll really come down to opportunity. By the way, I just looked. He has 334 shots this year.
Yeah, that's crazy. I looked that up too, but I didn't want to
that's insane. So there's
not quite 400, but that's still crazy. Yeah.
So 66 on 334 is almost 20% shooting percentage. So like that is not going to happen in the NHL probably, right? Like not many NHL players do that. But I do think that, you know, it's entirely possible that he carves himself a role, you know, let's say it is on the third line. You've got Oliver Moore doing all the hard stuff. Once the puck's in the offensive zone, just you pass it over to Nick Lardis and Nick Lardis gets a good scoring chance. And maybe Nick Lardis comes out of this looking like a Jeff Skinner where he has a couple of seasons where he really pops. But do you pay $9 million for a guy like that? Probably not. But as an auxiliary goal scorer, yeah, you could probably use a guy like that. So with him, I think, you know, for a guy who shoots as well as he does, I'm not necessarily surprised that at this point in his OHL career, he's just on fire. And with guys like him, you know, I'm always sort of going, you know what? Good for you. This is great, right? Really promising. Obviously, you can't take 70 goals away from someone, but let's see. You know, let's put him in the AHL. Let's see how he does there. If you're right, and guys like Moore and Rinzel and all these guys are coming to town, and they're more play with the puck everywhere else outside the offensive zone type players, then you go to Lardis to sort of finish the job. That could work. And if it works and you win, then who cares, you know? So we'll see what happens. But he has been definitely very intriguing and extremely productive, obviously, this year.
I think I'm pretty sure, like, if he doesn't score a goal for the rest of the year, like, he'll still finish goal per game. Like, that's how
yeah.
insane his production
He's
has
almost
been.
there. You're right. He's almost there. Yeah.
That's really all the questions I got for the Blackhawks system.